Okay, so I've been asked a few times recently if I would do a reloading class, because I've sold some guns. I normally sell a gun with a tuned load, a hunting gun, a high-end hunting gun, an accurate, a quarter-minute gun. A quarter-minute gun is not an incidental thing. To get a gun that shoots quarter-minute, you have to, I do the best I can. I get a gun that shoots quarter-minute, that shoots a hunting gun, a 300 or a 338 or a 308 or something. And there's more to it than just building the gun. Part of the system that's many times not talked about is the reloading aspect of it. So I get stuck a lot of times making up lots of 200 or 300 rounds of ammunition to sell with a hunting gun. And I always document it. I always document the tuning and the loading and the whatever, and I pass that on. But a lot of people don't reload because they say, well, I'm not comfortable reloading. Would you ever consider doing a reloading class? And it's never worked out because it's always people that can afford nice guns, built guns, accurate guns, normally have a job that they work all the time. So if I was going to do a reloading class for 2 or 3 people, getting those 2 or 3 people together for several nights in a row is really hard. So what I'm going to start doing instead is, because I'm doing this YouTube thing, I'm going to start documenting various steps of the way I reload. And I was just making up some cases here. And I'm going to spend a minute here. I'm going to go through and I'm not going to bore you with hours and hours. Most of these cases are done. I've got a few left here. I've got a few more here. These ones have been fired 3 or 4 times. There's a bag here that says 9 firings, shilling 700. I just know that this particular bag was done with the same reamer. I built a hunting gun, and I used that little bag of cases to dial in that hunting gun, and then I made up some cases and I sent them down the road. So these are actually for one of my match guns. And I figured, since I'm almost at the end of running this set of cases, I'm going to go ahead and bore you while I go through a few of these cases and just show you the method that I've developed. This is a fitted die, and maybe if there's time on this video, I will go ahead and show you some of the dies. I've gone through, I don't know, 7 or 8 different chambers in trying to dial in the 300 WSM, and this is my latest, my greatest, my most balanced. And I just wanted to go through some of the things that are that I consider to be super important. I'm using a die wax here because that way, if I get this stuff on my hands, I don't feel like I'm polluting my body. I don't feel like it's got deleterious effects. I've used a lot of different oils and different things, but what I do here, so that I can go through and build match loads quickly, I use, this happens to be Imperial Sizing Die Wax. I use my thumbnail and I scratch on this neck pretty good. And I just wanted to show that you use a very small amount of wax. Essentially, I guess, use as little wax as you possibly can. And what I've done here for and I could do this on the field, I could do this here. I've gotten to the point where I buy one of these cheap little presses, and I have a die set up for a specific chamber. I happen to have 3 guns running right now that have this chamber in it. So these settings work for several different guns that I'm running. But unfortunately, if I get a chance to pan across to my 300 WSM die box, I'll show you that I've got 7 or 8 dies, and it's hard to keep them straight. It's a real pain. But the method remains the same. The press doesn't matter. I use these because I've learned to deal with the inadequacies of the little press, because it offers me some advantages that I can't get with another kind of press. I got presses set up all around this room. And bottom line is, when I'm forced to build ammo for people, it's a real pain, because even though I charge a fair price for it, I still have to break out the time. And frankly, I want to be building, I want to be shooting, I want to be doing stuff other than making ammunition for people. But I need to stress that there are certain rules that must be followed. You'll notice that I'm doing at least 2 cases for every time I touch that wax right there. You want to use the tiniest little bit of lubricant. And this particular press, this system works pretty good because as I'm going through doing a lot of cases, I've taken this cheap little $30 press, or $20 press, I don't know what I get them for. I don't remember, I've got them laying all over the place, I use them for everything. And I wear this because as I'm going, this press has been modified. The one thing that these little presses don't do very well is handle primers. This is my primer bucket down here. I recently emptied it. And when you get, I normally am using it under my presses, and when it starts to fill up, I go dump it. So what I've done with this, I've taken this press and I've milled a little hole in the side of it. And it's kind of interesting because as I'm working here on my lap, all of a sudden a primer will fall out of my lap and I'll know that the little primer reservoir is full. So then I have to close it and dump it into my bucket. It's not perfect, there's better ways, but this allows me to have my press with me anywhere that I go. I'm hoping to very soon start traveling to matches, and frankly, for a person like myself, I don't like to take the time to, you get home from a match and you get another one the next weekend, and I haven't done it much, so I just haven't had time in my life to be able to do it. But I know that when I start traveling, especially if let's say I go down and shoot with the boys in California, I need to be able to carry this stuff with me so that I can, load as I go. And this allows me to do that because this press is small enough that I can build up a little range bag box, put it right in my gun case if I have to, and I can have it set all the time. Because if you're going to reload cases over and over and over and over, die settings become almost an art form. It's like with this press, I can feel, I know where I'm sizing these. I got my hockey tape wrapped around. This is actually an athletic tape. I call it hockey tape because I spent some time in the Midwest and I like to say hockey. But this locks the thing up so that I can just relax and use it and not worry about screwing up my die settings. And the points that I want to make, and the reason I want to kind of show you the way I'm doing it, and I'm not wearing gloves here because they get sweaty and they don't. So I don't mind getting this wax. It's an innocuous substance and it gets right on my fingers, and I just wash it off later. I'm going to go through and prep out some of these cases here. What I'm doing is with these cases that I worked up the load in a hunting gun with will still fit my match gun. These cases, this box right here has got, this is a set of match cases with, I don't know, 10 firings on it. This set right here has 9 firings on it, and they stay rock solid for, once I have them made, I don't ever have to trim them or modify them, or I never have to worry. It's one of those things I do check now and again. Earlier I did a video on carrying a Teslong bore scope along, because if you start getting some, if you feel like your die is oversizing a little bit, if anything happens, you can stick a load in there, run that bore scope in from the muzzle, and go up and actually look for the clearance up here. Because I run super tight chamber tolerances and super tight dies, and to get this stuff to size to the standards that I want, which allows me to shoot the cases over and over and over, you have to be able to use just the tiniest, most minimal amount of some sort of lubricant. And I've used all sorts of lubricants that I don't even want to mention. There have been times when I'm working with a case that's got a die that tends to oversize, that I will even use, I don't know, I've used Butch's before. That time I did 3. You'll notice that I ran 3 without adding any lube, because too much lube can screw up your settings as quickly as anything. Too much lube, and when I say too much, yeah, see there, juiced it up and it went in like nothing. But too much, ooh, I just screwed up, I forgot to dump this. I just dumped out primers right here. This is not actually my normal setup. Normally I'm turned, I've got my back to I just brought this camera in here and I thought, I'm going to go ahead and show, I put these back in with the primers up, so that I can tell that they're unprimed. I'm just videotaping a segment, and I hope that someday I can put these segments together and show what I do, why I do it, because it works. I don't often even use the same rag. This rag has been here and it's done a few hundred cases, but if it starts to get oily, then I have to either, I could go wash it, or I use paper towel. I've had people say, oh, microfiber rags are the way to go for cleaning wax. Well, that's true, except that that wax goes into the rag. And I am anal about keeping everything the same. And you'll notice as I'm moving these around, I always move from one station to another so I can, while I'm talking, keep track of the ones that I've done and the ones that I haven't done, so that I don't screw up, because I screw up a lot. And then, because I'm only doing these few right here on camera, those ones haven't been wiped off yet. So what I'm going to do is get through these few, what these are, what I end up using these for, these would shoot in a match. They're indistinguishable from this rack. This is just enough right here to use in my heavy gun. 10, 20, 30, that's 3 relays with a few ciders. And if I run out of ciders, I could grab some of these because I'll always have them with me. These are not, this rack right here has been fired 9 times. These here on the end that I've already loaded, that I'm going to go fire them in the morning, have been fired, I don't remember, I'll have to check my notes. I've got silver Sharpie on the back of them, so they've been fired a lot. That means that when I start putting silver Sharpie on, that's one of my first signs that the primer's not loose, but I'm starting to be able to feel, the lettering is starting to not wear off, but it's, you know, it might be that these have been fired hot, whatever it is. These are not perfect cases. They've been hammered a little bit. So these might have 20 firings on them. I don't know. I have a bag here somewhere that shows it. These right here have fewer firings. So these I'll use as ciders if I need to, if I run out of my main ones. But what I'm going to do right here is I'm just going to put this rag on here, and I'm not going to lay it over them, because I don't want to pull it off and forget what's under there and dump my cases all in the floor. So put this back where it goes. I'm going to set back up for my next run, and I think I'm going to slide this camera over, and I'll probably have to go on auto focus for a minute here. This over here is where I do my weighing and loading. There's another press setup right there. This happens to be the cedar that I'm using. There are my notes, the load that I'm working with tomorrow. I'm playing with tuners, so I'm trying to come up with a load. Hopefully that camera's not too bright. I'm trying to come up with a load here that I can use through a wider set of conditions and tune it out instead of having to load. Traditionally, for super high accuracy, you've got to load as you go, and that offers some disadvantages. I don't think that I can ever use this method specifically all the way on PPCs, because they pretty much have to be loaded as you go no matter what. But I figured I would run this over, see if I can get and then I'll put it back on manual focus so it quits clicking. Hopefully that'll work, because I know that right over here, I was just putting stuff away earlier and I realized that this is my 300 WSM box. This goes with me, or this is where I keep my 300 WSM dies. And this is a series of 300 WSM dies that have been modified. I wrap tape around them and I write notes on them. This one says less taper, touched neck shoulder junction. This one is a number 3 in a series of 4 or 5 dies I was making. This is a completely handmade die. The lettering is basically gone. I lettered this with and this is an unhardened die. This is a die that I just made for a client. This isn't my die. I sold it to a guy out in Tri-Cities, Washington, and I borrowed it because I needed it. This is a Witten die that is set up, and ready to go. It's a 300 WSM die that is set for another chamber and set for one of those quick change, and I know that I have 3 guns done with this chamber that fit this die. This is not my latest. And without keeping an exhaustive series of notes, these are the dies that I currently have in use. And this is not meant in any way to state that this Wident isn't the best of them. This is a good die. The problem is that if something changes and I need one quickly, it's always hard to order them up. So I just want to show you, these are some modified factory dies that I've been using for my WSM projects. And this is the way I keep them sorted. And I've got like 7 or 8 of these boxes that I use for different applications. Because if it takes a while to get the sizing perfected on any different, in my case it's any different chambering reamer. I've been spending years working up to my final perfect 300 WSM. First I had to decide, is the 300 WSM worthy of me to use as a competition cartridge, because my goal here always is to work toward the end of being able to, once I get my life cleared up and I have the time to be able to back off from my business a little bit and my kids are big enough, then I can go out and compete with these. But I need to be ready to do that. I don't want to be out there just scabbing around being one of the also-rans. I actually want to be competitive. So in the meantime, with the incidental building of guns and going through different things, I've had a bunch of people ask me about doing a reloading class. Well, doing a reloading class scares me a little bit, because the standard factory guns, factory dies, reload a few times, throw the brass away, is available anywhere in any book. But that's not what I do. I make, procure, modify, somehow get a fitted die for every system. And about the time you get that all dialed in, the barrel is starting to show some wear, and 600, 700, 800 rounds later, that barrel's gone and you're stuck with this deal. So that's one of the reasons I now have 10 or 15 of these little presses, and I tend to just set them up, dial them to in my case, a chamber, not so much a gun, because I match my chambers. And then I've got something that I can work with, because there's a tremendous time block involved in prepping these. These dies you may recognize if you watched, or these cases you may recognize from other videos. This is a part of a rack of 6x47s that I've been working on a neck turning project on the lathe. This here is a group of I just was building them yesterday. I just blew these out. These are 6 PPCs. And I guess to me, to do justice to reloading in the sense that I call it doing justice, we need to move beyond the reloading books. Otherwise I'm just wasting my time. So through these series of videos, whether I ever come up with a comprehensive reloading practice start to finish or not, I'm going to try to. I'm going to try to work through and show each step of the process the way I do it, adapted to bench rest style standards. Because in the end, you have to load, you have to reload to bench rest standards to get your system to work. That's why I laugh when people talk to me about, yeah, I have a 1/4 minute 300 Win Mag, or I have a 1/4 minute hunting gun also, a 280 something or another with a carbon barrel, or a, and I say, oh, okay, you know, I'm not going to argue with you, but it's a little frustrating when people come to the range and it's nothing but excuses. Well, I this and I that. No, it is entirely possible with a well-built and balanced hunting rifle system, a well-built and balanced set of dies, good reloading practice. You get a good gun, good dies, good reloading practices, use bench rest style reloading practices. The other thing that I find with what I'm going to call high-end loaders, or bench rest reloaders, or reloaders who go above and beyond, they have a tendency to say, I do 13 steps And I don't know which ones are important and which, well, to me it's like if you're doing a step that's not important, let's try to skip that. Let's try to isolate these steps. And I've managed to do that in such a way that I feel that every step that I do, from the making of the case, the initial ironing out of the case, to the neck turning of the case, to every step of the reloading practice, I don't think there's any part of it, if I skip any part of it, accuracy starts to get fuzzy. Because one of the things I've been fighting over the last 6 months is that 2 of my guns went south. What that means is I built a big heavy gun, which is sitting right over here. I'm going to hit autofocus for a minute, just pan around the room for a minute because I'm wrapping up for the night. I built this unlimited gun over here. It's all good components, but after doing all the different things, I made some mistakes with my initial choice of my 300 WSM chambering, my this, my that. The scope started to move on me, so I had to mill a big slot in the top of this action and another opposing slot in the base. I've got that thing, I've got a piece of hardened steel rod in there now, locking the two. The big problem in the end, I have ascertained, was that this was moving on this because I'm slamming hard on 30-some pounds of steel. Well, you can't see the steel inside the stock. It's got steel inside here, a steel adjustment screw running up through here, tying into a steel that comes to the back. The back of the action is actually floated. But the steel, there's a steel plate underneath here that goes all the way through. And then I bedded this barreled action onto this whole assembly, and the bedding was moving enough. The gun wasn't shooting to the capacity that I wanted it to. So I feel that I've got this one fixed now. I'm getting the loads worked up for it, and I thought, you know, I'm going to document some of this. Hopefully it's helpful to someone, at least in showing what one guy does to put together ammunition that's fit for an accurate gun. And we'll see how it goes. Hopefully I can also learn to edit down the road, and maybe I'll put together a comprehensive reloading sequence. But at this point, it's going to be hit and miss. It's bit by bit, and I'm doing the best I can to document the steps as they go, and hopefully somebody will be helped by being able to put these parts together and realize that it is possible to make cases last a long time and to get a gun that shoots day after day after day consistently.